A warning to America. 25 ways the U.S. is being destroyed in under 2 minutes. 1. Open borders and illegal immigration. 2. Rampant crime and unsafe cities. 3. Mass addiction and fentanyl. 4. Election insecurity and interference. 5. The educational indoctrination of children. 6. The asymmetrical weaponization of justice. 7. The destruction of private property rights. 8. Inflation and debt. 9. The global depopulation agenda. 10. Record low fertility and plummeting birth rates. 11. Unaccountable federal bureaucracies. 12. Toxic food supply. 13. Vaccine and pandemic disinformation. 14. The transcontagion and sterilization of children. 15. Overprescription of pharmaceuticals. 16. Destruction of the nuclear family and parental rights. 17. DEI and the new racism. 18. Moral and societal decay. 19. The financing of endless foreign wars. 20. The sprawling surveillance state. 21. The centralization and consolidation of government power. 22. The destruction of trust in institutions. 23. The censorship industrial complex. 24. State media propaganda. 25. The smearing of those who challenge it.
Mission log 2050-01.
And we're back. And we've got a packed panel today, a couple new faces. Glenn, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, Glenn Meter. I'm with privacyacademy.com, and we teach people how to be private and secure online.
That's awesome. Eric?
Yep, I'm Eric Meter, and I'm, no surprise, Glenn's son. So I'm also with Privacy Academy.
Right on. That's awesome. Our SDN regulars will recognize Jeff MD, our in-house 007, Don Mann, our in-house SEAL Team 6 warrior, Randy Nantz, our in-house Green Beret, and Mike Sterling, I think is his name, you know, our in-house bomb expert, aka he does a great impression of Klaus Schwab, by the way, just for anybody who's not familiar. He's not even going to get the monocle out. He's grumpy and he's tired. All right. So because Mike is grumpy and is tired, I will start the conflicted question, of course, which we'll answer at the end of the video. A unique opportunity to kill a tyrant has presented itself. However, once the shot is fired and the man is dead, his entourage will surely kill you. Your family is far away in a semi-safe place, but they still need you. Would you sacrifice yourself for the greater good of the community and risk your family, or would you keep your family safe and let the opportunity pass? How would you handle this situation and why? Interesting.
The greater good.
Interesting question, right? So our video today opened up with 25 ways that America is essentially being destroyed. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of the 25 points, add some commentary, and then add some advice on actionable steps that everyday people can do. So the first one is a doozy. We've covered it ad nauseum on Survival Dispatch News, and that's the problem of open borders and illegal immigration. Jeff, I'm going to go to you first since you're the closest to the border and you're friends with Mark Lamb, and y'all are taking the overflow now that Texas is pushing it west into Arizona.
Yeah, I was gonna complain to Doc about that, since Texas is kind of shutting down their border. It's pushing them all our way. It's like trying to, with a handful of Jello, when you squeeze, it just comes out somewhere else. Yeah, we've got a bad combination here between a long border with Mexico and a governor who's pretty much useless. So we're seeing a lot more, illegals coming up from our border. Lukeville is the main one. For some reason, they picked that one. It's out in the middle of nowhere, which is probably why they picked it. And, Tucson is at its limit as far as what it can deal with. And they just keep welcoming more because they're a sanctuary city, because we have an idiot governor. people like Mark Lamb have been trying to do as much as they can. Same thing with the sheriff down in Cochise County, which is another border county. But there's limits to what you can do if you don't have a governor who's willing to back you up, and we don't have one, quite frankly. So in the short term, I don't see us doing much until she's gone. Just for the record, she has vetoed almost 200 bills since she got elected last year. She's already vetoed over 50 this year. She vetoed 143 last year because we have a Republican Congress, but we don't have a super majority to override her vetoes.
I did not know
Just
that.
passed one. I mean, she just vetoed a bill that was like Florida's that was going to make it easier to get rid of squatters. She just vetoed that, so she's pro squatter.
So there's been quite a few comments recently that essentially every state is now a border state because of the massive scale of this invasion. I would add that for those people who aren't aware, there was a secretive program uncovered where the Biden admin has been flying invaders into the country as opposed to just coming across our southern border. And the number was somewhere in the 330 odd thousand range. And I think between October and January, 20 some odd thousand went to the great state of Texas. The rest of them were brought right here in Florida. And I think that clearly there's some politics related to that. Glenn, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, so I think the point that I want to bring up is that this is not just a US thing. This is happening in Europe. And, I'm in Germany right now. We're visiting my wife's family. And it is a big problem. And there's one country over here, Hungary, that's not playing that game. They're not letting anyone in they're not letting any illegals into Hungary. And I will tell you that Budapest is one of the safest cities I've ever been in. It is really amazing. And I guess my only other point here is I think that there's a deeper, this is not a left versus right thing. This is there's a deeper reason for what's going on. And I don't know how far you want me to go into that, but I think it's
all the way.
It's the destruction of the Western civilization is the goal, because, and I think the reason for that is the concept of individual liberty is a Western ideal, and the people that are putting the pieces in place for the digital ID, the central bank digital currency, the social credit system, all of that stuff, they want to enslave humanity. And what's in the way is of individual liberty, and especially the US, where we believe that our rights come from God and not from the state, and the state doesn't have the authority to take away our rights. So the US is top of mind, but it's the whole West.
Yeah, that definitely valid comments. I frequently say that, as far as America is concerned, we're the firewall between globalism and freedom, because if we go down, there's nobody coming to rescue us or the rest of the world. They'll get their one world government and all the things you just mentioned, social credit scores and all the stuff that goes with that. Don, I know you've got some pretty clear thoughts on the border, so I'll let you weigh in next.
Well, I got two things, Chris. If more people, all of us, could take politics out of the equation, we'd be so much better off, because, okay, if anybody asked, hey, if I keep this border open, we're going to get a lot of fentanyl coming in. It could kill 100,000 or so people. We're going to get a lot of children raped and killed, murdered, and women, human trafficking. The drug lords are going to be making a fortune, and there's going to be some deaths on these ranches, farms, and things. Why would anybody think that's acceptable? It's hard to say. I know one common answer is, well, they're going to flock to these cities, the population grows, and they're going to get more representation. So that's a real concern on how people can be okay with that. We can't get Democrat senators or congressmen down on the border because they don't want to see what's going on there. So there's a pollution or a cancer in these people's souls to allow this to happen for political reasons. That's a big bother. And that really bothers me because as an American, to see that maybe half or so of the country is okay with this happening, it's a big issue. And it's an issue that doesn't have an answer right now. I know we had, when Trump left office, he gave over a secure border. The wall was being built, and it really put a slowdown to it. I think a bigger problem is half of our country are willing to keep it open and think it's okay, let's not worry about it. That's basically my take on all that. I wish we'd keep the politics out of it and what's right and what's evil. And this is evil doing what we're doing.
That sure is. Randy, give us your thoughts.
Well, I was just thinking to myself, what Don said there, like 50% of the country. So I wonder how many of them actually believe that's what's happening, or they believe that this isn't, they believe the lie. There's no invasion. All these people aren't coming in. These are just conservatives making it up, and they're just lying to try to slow us down in what we're doing. So I always wonder that, how many people actually believe this is going on. I know there's a fair amount that do, and I don't think anybody that I know is okay with that. But again, I don't, honestly, I don't talk to a bunch of left liberals. I mean, I have some friends that are, but we don't really get into those conversations. So I don't know if it's just they're believing the lie, or like Don said, because if they believe it, if they know that's happening, it's definitely evil on their part to think, it's okay, this is good.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, what are your thoughts?
I lean towards what Glenn said. I mean, I've traveled a lot through Europe with him recently because we've been visiting Germany, and it's amazing to see how much it's changed. It doesn't look anything like it did 10 years ago. And so, yeah, I think it's planned. I think they're coming from countries that don't have the same ideals, and then they're bringing those ideals to our countries as well. So,
yeah, and I mean, the problem there is that there's no instance in history that I'm aware of where you have two diametrically opposed cultures or more, and that country's held it together. There's always one that will end up essentially ruling the roost. Mike, you've traveled extensively. Give us your thoughts on this border conundrum, and then we'll try to make a few recommendations before we move on to the next point.
Well, I absolutely agree with these guys. I was in Germany for a couple of years there, especially at the end of the Cold War, and then I went back. Honestly, I went back in '99, and it was a completely different place. All the migrants that they'd been bringing in at that time had made it into a completely different place from what I remember. And now it's got to be just absolutely ridiculous. And that exact same thing is happening here in the United States. And we've got to get in front of this at some point. But the problem is now there's so very many of them that the ability for us to get them out of the country is going to turn into a massive fight, period. There's no way for us to get out of this without fighting at this point.
Yeah, well, you may not be aware of this, Mike, but I was at Mar-a-Lago a few weeks ago, and
Randy, this is turning into his back at Bragg story.
I know.
I will say,
though, we are the last light in the world as the American people. I don't know that the government is anymore, but the American people are. And as we already discussed, we're just in the way now. That's what this has come to. We're in the way. And I think you're right, Mike. It's coming down to a fight, or either that or people are just going to roll over and give it up. You got two choices.
So the largest mass deportation we've had in history was early 50s. It was Eisenhower. It was called Operation Wetback. Clearly, there was no political correctness back then. I want to say it was around 1.4 million people that were deported. But we heard from Tom Holman and other officials like him that, that have served in capacities with ICE and CBP, those sort of things. And they're pretty resolute that they can get the job done. They're not, suggesting that it's a small job and it'll cost a lot of money and take a lot of effort. But anybody who keeps up with things on X, because things happen way faster on X than anywhere else, especially mainstream media. If you scroll through X for 10 minutes, you will see one instance after another instance after another instance of these horrendous crimes being committed by known criminals. These are people who have criminal records and keep coming back across the border, rapes, murders, all sorts of stuff. They get caught, that we kick them out of the country, they turn around, they come right back in again. I mean, the element of crime, and we've covered it, right? So it's everything from burglary, tourism, to the heinous crimes that I just mentioned. This is not fair to our country for us to be subjected to this sort of stuff. It's, at the end of the day, it's our country, and we have to treat it like that. Going back to the culture thing just really quickly, I learned a long time ago from some professionals in the area of how relationships and cultures develop, truly scientists in that area, that I'm simplifying it, but we don't necessarily attract what we want. We attract what we are. And that's why when you go to certain cities, you see there's the Chinatown here and there's Little Italy there. People will coalesce around people who have the same values and beliefs. So when you flood the country with all of these different value systems and cultures, it breaks things down pretty significantly. And that's how we've ended up with these pockets, some of them state by state, but some of it's city by city sort of thing. So as far as, I want to give a couple of recommendations from the entire panel on what can we do in light of the border problem, which we have literally been beating to death for several years now. And people ask, they're like, what can I do? Well, you can support groups like Tom Homan's Border 911. These guys are traveling around the country to educate those people that Randy referred to, who refuse to believe that there's even a problem in the first place. You can support companies like My Lindell and My Pillow. They've tried to cut him off at the knees and take away his funding. But when you have people like him who are America first citizens, and they support the right candidates and they can financially support the right candidates, that's how we get past some of this stuff in the long term. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be very painful. But somebody said to me last month, as terrible as things are currently, America's still worth fighting for. And that particular individual was trying to do everything they could to make sure that they raised money for a particular cause that's America first. So I'm just going to quickly go across each one. If anybody has any other ideas, Jeff, what recommendations would you have for the average person?
Well, I think the average person needs to be involved locally as much as nationally. If you can vote in people for your city council, for your school boards, for your sheriff, that will, that believe in freedom and believe in personal responsibility, you'll at least put yourself in an island of sanity. But if you get enough islands of sanity linked together, then you get a state of sanity, and then you get multiple states of sanity. And it like they say, all politics is local. I think in a lot of ways it is.
That's a good perspective, Jeff. Glenn, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I would just add to that. He said, Jeff said, be as equally interested locally as nationally. I think it's got to be even more. I think we got to focus. I mean, in a way, I think the federal level is gone. I mean, it's so corrupt now. It's going to be hard to. I don't really see how it can come back. The state is where the power is from the 10th Amendment, and the states have the power of nullification, and we need someone that does like what DeSantis does on steroids, and just say, if the federal government tries to do anything in the state that they don't have constitutional authority for, they can't do it, and we just restrict them from doing it. I mean, we just got to go all out with the states and the 10th Amendment, I think.
Well said, Glenn. Well said. Don?
Yeah, what Glenn was saying, I couldn't agree with more either. This new we used to have the Great Awakening. Now we talk about the Great Awokening. But it's much, much more than just what's going on in our schools and the school board meetings and this transgender movement and the COVID, all that craziness. You know, it's in DC, it's in Wall Street, it's in countries all around the world. So even if we get the greatest Reagan / Trump-like president in there, we still have a fierce battle because the world is, a lot of it's going that direction. And I think we've been on the defense way too long. We have to be proactive and go on the offense because for some reason, conservatives, Republicans seem to be they're not, they don't go out and put out a message loudly and broadly like the Democrats and those who are trying to destroy our country do. But I do think we have to go on the offense and take this fight head on because our nation's crumbling little by little by little. And it's really been happening depending on which way you want to go back to. Maybe some say the 50s, maybe early 60s, but year after year after year, it's crumbling more and more. And we're just on the defensive. We need to be on the offensive and fight every step of the way.
Yeah, Don, you raise a good point. Myself, I think the watershed event was LBJ's immigration bill in the mid-60s. That's what opened the floodgates. And that's where we ended up bringing in people who do not share our values and beliefs. And that's when the division really started at that point in time. Randy, your thoughts?
Well, I've already covered a bunch because I was just like Jeff and Glenn and Don. I mean, it starts locally. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to, with your school boards for what they're teaching our kids, you know, is a big deal. And the local municipalities. But beyond that, you know, I would say if you're a good leader, if you're a good person, you know what I mean? You believe in the rule of law and justice and doing things the right way. Maybe it's time for you to step up and run for office or go do something of that sort so that we can get better leaders in there. It's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, good point, Randy. I think that just backing up a little bit because we're all on the same page here is that there's a distinction between a Republican and a good candidate. The two are not synonymous.
No.
And, you know, we've got some pretty horrendous rhinos in office at all levels right now, making decisions that are not America first decisions. And at the end of the day, if we're the world superpower, and yes, China's coming up and Russia is kind of a half superpower, whatever you want to call them, you cannot look after anybody else until you can look after yourself. So that could be in a parental capacity or like this, speaking in global terms. And if we don't look after America first, then we can't look after anybody else. But again, $95 billion last week given to Ukraine and Israel and zero for our border. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everyone's saying. I think local's the way to go. I think states hold the power, like Glenn was saying with the 10th Amendment. I think a really big key is that we can't forget the big picture. It's very blatant what's going on. You know, they're trying to destroy the ideals. So every time you think about the immigration crisis, you need to think about the big picture going on behind the scenes as well. And I also agree with what Don was saying earlier, where you just have to look at it from a logical standpoint, and then just no emotion involved. Just think about it logically. It doesn't make any sense. So,
Yeah, well said, Mike. You're muted.
Sorry. So I look at this and I kind of go back to the intelligence side. And Randy, you're gonna remember this. Same with you, Jeff. The 60-30-10 rule. And so you put 60% of your focus from your intelligence side on your local area, 30% upon your region, your state, whichever, and then only 10% on national, geopolitical, everything like that, because you can't affect those things. So 60% is the area that you can affect. That could be your town, and that could be your county. Why don't you do what a lot of us have done? Go down to your county and start volunteering with your sheriff's department, right? Offer training. If you've got skills, if you're older and you can't go, you know, like us, we can't be going out on patrol or anything like that. Go down and just offer skills, offer classes, things like that, right? Help them to be able to move along. Run a radio for them. Do something. You're stretching your local assets further right? The people that can get out on the street, now maybe they're out from behind a desk. Man, I'll go down and I'll do paperwork for them. I'll do a ride along, things like that. When we had the big tornado swarms here in 2011 here in northern Alabama, our neighborhood watch, we locked down this neighborhood and the neighborhood next door. Sheriff's Department knew they would literally roll past once a day. We'd give them a thumbs up. They knew that they did not have to even worry anything about these two neighborhoods. You're now stretching their assets a lot further, okay? Because they can do more with less now, all right? Give them the assets. Work with your local law enforcement. Work with folks, right? Set up a neighborhood watch, the like, all right? These are things that you can do locally. And then go to your city and county meetings, elect proper people there, right? Weed out the scumbags, get rid of them. And then, because we can't all sit here and look ourselves in a mirror and say, oh, these people are these are the, this is the lesser of two evils. We don't get any choices for who to elect. Well, maybe that's because you're not going to any of your local elections. Maybe you're not electing the proper people at your state level, things like that. Work at the grassroots level and start working your way up. Eventually you gotta pick up your rifle and step out of the hills, right, Randy?
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing, Mike, is not just getting engaged locally, but put up or shut up. So you have the opportunity to affect some change, but it's not going to happen being an armchair quarterback.
You're not going to do it sitting behind your laptop or scrolling or doom scrolling continuously on your phone. Get up and do something.
Yeah, well said. And, this dovetails into the next point, which is rampant crime in unsafe cities. Before I hand it over to Jeff, I just want to state that when you do not charge people for breaking the law, when you do not convict people for breaking the law, it creates this illusion of crime rates dropping. And that's what's happened over the course of the past few years, plus some changes that were forced on FBI.gov and their database and how crimes are reported. So you will have some people currently say, oh, violent crime's on the decline. In reality, it's taking off. It's getting even worse because of the reasons I just mentioned. Jeff, give me your thoughts on this. Is point number 2 out of 25 things that are destroying our country.
Yeah, the crime thing is ridiculous because what it does, it just slowly erodes the quality of life for everyone, or actually quickly erodes the quality of life for everyone. And you're absolutely right in that by California, you can steal up to $950 worth of stuff and it's a misdemeanor. So what does that mean? Well, hey, felony theft goes away. It's not that there's any less theft. There actually is a lot more. It's just not counted. It's like if I shot Don Mann in the head, but nobody reported the crime, he's still dead, but there's no murder on the books. So, and what we can do about it, I think, is the neighborhood watching. Look out for your own neighborhood. Protect your area and get other people in the neighboring neighborhoods to go, I like their neighborhood better. They have less problem. Let's do what they're doing. And it's not the police officers. They would love to arrest these guys, but you've got to get these pansy-ass Soros prosecutors out of office. You got to find people to run against them. You've got to donate to their campaigns so they can run ads saying, I will put criminals behind bars, instead of the I will be fair and we'll all sing, peace and love harmony songs and push DEI. I mean, you look at what's going on in California right now. You had somebody from the DA's office was just charged with 11 felonies for stealing the personnel files of LA County sheriff's officers who opposed the previous administration. And this is the ethics person for
Right.
Gaston.
Yeah.
So you got to get those people out of there.
So I think we're back to being involved in your local
Yes.
community and politics, which is great. Number one. Number two, I don't know if you all have heard this, but the acronym DEI has been redefined recently to stand for didn't earn it. And Can't say that I disagree with that. I'm going to change the order up here a little bit though, Mike. Speak to the local area studies that Mike Shelby and the guys at Forward Observer facilitate. You've done it. You've gone through this firsthand, and this is directly relevant to rampant crime and unsafe cities. So go ahead and give them a shameless plug.
Right. Yeah. So the folks over at Forward Observer, 100% on this. I was when Mike passed this across my radar, I was constantly kicking myself because I knew better. I knew that I should have done something like this. We used to do this on a continuous wheel basis in Iraq and Afghanistan and Africa. And like a moron, I'm sitting here, didn't do it. Right. Perform an area study. That way, you know who the good guys and who the bad guys are in your area. What are the vulnerable areas? What are the sites that what are going to be your vulnerabilities in an area? You're performing a self-vulnerability assessment. And once you do that, you now have information. Information allows you to make educated decisions. If you don't even know your own bloody neighbors, how are you going to make appropriate decisions as to what to do if there is a problem in your neighborhood? Do your neighbors need saved? Or is it your neighbors that are shooting up the neighborhood?
Or something else that came out, and we just have discussed this previously offline, was do you have prisons in close proximity to where you're at? And then the shit hits the fan and all of a sudden the floodgates are open. Are you even aware of that? Many people wouldn't be, right?
Or do you have what I have? A 40-mile redneck shield around you. Defense in depth, baby.
Everybody should have a redneck shield, right? So, and I just want to make something clear. We are not affiliated with Forward Observer. We don't get compensated by them. We just really, really like what they do. Super smart guys, and they're on their game.
Yeah, those guys, S2 Underground and was it OSINT Defender?
Yeah.
Those guys, man, I'm telling you, they're some of the best intel data, up to date, on the money, man. And they're professional intelligence folks that are just doing it as a side gig.
Yeah, exactly. Glenn, I want to come back to you here. So on rampant crime in unsafe cities, I guess the first question I want to ask, and it's interesting that you're in Germany and you mentioned that. I've been saying for many, many years, if we watch what's happening in other Western countries, it is a harbinger of things to come here. It always happens somewhere else, and they cook up the recipe and then they bring it to America. We see lots of international reports on crime in Germany. There was a very famous New Year's Eve incident where multiple women were raped not that many years ago. What do you see happening there to kind of give us an idea of what's coming here, and what are your suggestions?
Yeah, I don't really see it much here just because I avoid the big cities. I don't really like big cities. So in the country, you don't really, you see it, but you don't see it nearly as much. It's still pretty peaceful in the countries, but the cities is where it's at. And yeah, I guess I don't have enough personal experience to really speak on that, because I avoid those. I avoid the cities. So,
but that's a great suggestion in itself, because we're currently seeing this migration from urban to rural happening in America. 3% of the population, moved urban to rural between the 2010, 2020 census, and that's only continuing to happen more frequently. So actually, even though you don't have the experience in the cities, you're a living example of the benefits of getting away from the cities and getting to those rural areas.
yeah.
Don, that firsthand as well.
Yep, I'm looking outside. I could look for a long time and not even see a person. I love it like that. But I was thinking, if you made a prediction back when everything started turning upside down on us back in the 60s, and say, what if we just go to war? Let's just go to war with freedom. Let's go to war with our history. Let's remove all of our heroes. Let's remove all of the people who made this a great, great country. And let's distort the difference between what a boy and a girl is. And let's not support the unborn baby. Let's let a lot of families grow up with just without the dad, the boys and the girls growing up with just a single mom. you could almost predict that our societies are going to look like they look like now. But every one of those issues is an issue that can be fixed. And I did get a little bit of optimism last week because, if you look back at 2016, the voice was, let's elect a new president who believes things we believe in. We have people like Glenn Youngkin, Greg Abbott, Ron DeSantis voted in. So I think there could be a tide turning. It's got to turn a lot. That aircraft carrier is huge, and it's got to really turn around. But right now, in the last 30 years, I believe violent crimes are up 6 times the amount, 6 times more now. And the way we keep crumbling in society, that number is going to keep going and going and going. But I do think we can fix issue by issue if we look at it as small chunks.
Yeah, I think part of that, Don, is that as our civil liberties are eroded, right? I mean, first thing you do in life is decide what you want. Next thing you do is decide what you're willing to give up to get it. So you hear a lot of people who are of a progressive mindset say, well, we should curtail this civil liberty if it saves just one life. And so there's that constant erosion has been happening for many, many decades now. And my take on it is that when you keep taking stuff away from somebody or a segment of society and they have nothing left to lose, that's a scary person. That's when, if you have nothing to lose, you got nothing to lose. And that's when really bad things happen. So I don't have a crystal ball to predict when that's going to happen, but if it keeps going the direction it's going, you will see people, adopt that type of strategy.
I
Randy?
believe the word that you were looking for is soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Randy?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I tell people all the time that same thing, but I think I agree with what everybody said. And my one thing I would say is what Glenn's already touched on and you highlighted. Move to the country, move to a rural area, get out of the city. There'll be less crime there. And then you can start small, as Mike mentioned, and then, work your way up from there. But that would be, I would think, the best thing you could possibly do to avoid some of all this crime.
Yeah, I totally agree, Randy. Eric, you're batting cleanup.
Yep. Well, just based off of what I've seen growing up, I'm 24 years old now, but it seems like the youth and a lot of the stuff on social media is glorifying, drug use and very negative things. So I think social media is an aspect that plays into it as well. It's just very depraved. And so I think I would recommend, if you have children, be careful of what they consume online because it could influence them in a lot of ways.
So that's actually a great comment, Eric. And guys, I can't remember who it was. I'm not sure if it was on Survival Dispatch News or elsewhere, but I recently heard somebody say that one of their friends said, when your kids are on the internet, it's not so much what they have access to, it's that the bad people now have access to your child. Yeah. And I thought that was a really interesting angle to come at it from. So, all right. So moving on to number 3, which is mass addiction and fentanyl. And I'll go back to you first, Jeff, just because, again, you're close to the border, and we had the LTC doc Pete Chambers on not too long ago discussing frequently seeing drones being sent across the border by the cartels, dropping fentanyl and communicating the coordinates to their mules, so their mules don't have to carry it across the border anymore, and they pick it up and go. And you and Randy are both kind of ground zero here between Arizona and Texas.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a huge amount of drugs that come up from the border. They go up through Tucson, up to Phoenix. A lot of them go on State Highway 77, which is kind of the back way, which actually goes right by where I live, but it goes up to Phoenix the back way. And they're trying to stay off the interstates to avoid getting caught. Mark Lamb was talking about that, and that's where they spend a lot of their time, between the drugs and the illegals coming up from here. And then from here, they just fan out across the country. So we're a huge pipeline for the drugs through here. And I think when you have like a sanctuary city like Tucson, where Border Patrol really isn't operating or allowed to operate, since so many of these, these drug mules are illegals. And when you stop arresting or deporting or interacting with the illegals, the odds of you catching these drug mules goes down dramatically. We just had the rancher he wasn't acquitted, but the jury hung
Mistrial.
7-1 on the rancher who shot the drug mule on or he allegedly shot it. They don't know. They didn't find the bullet to kill the guy. But that guy had been deported like 7 times, and he was armed with an AK-47, and he was there with a group of other guys. He was a professional drug mule. He would just bring drugs across, go back to Mexico, bring drugs across, and just go back and forth all the time. So, when you have people it means he got caught 7 times and deported. How many times did he get through and not get caught?
Touche.
So how much drugs did that one guy bring across before the rancher, 72-year-old rancher, allegedly shot him because they shot at him first? In my book, that guy should be getting a medal. And most people around here feel that way as well. But yeah, the border's a war zone.
So beyond, having a good sheriff like Sheriff Mark Lamb voting for somebody of his caliber, I guess we're back to voting for other politicians that are against this stuff, that are at least going to stand up to it, I suppose, and not funded by George Soros. Or
Yeah.
Is there anything else that I'm missing in your opinion?
There's not much that one person can do against a drug cartel coming up from the road, but you can support and the elected officials who will fight that, because they have access to the purse, so they can use their money better. I would rather have my money spent by giving it to Mark Lamb to stop human smuggling and drug smuggling than fund another, buy out another motel to put illegals in. How about not letting the illegals in the first place and then using that money to stop the drugs from coming?
Sounds like a workable idea, huh? Pretty radical. Glenn, what's it look like in Europe on this topic of, is there fentanyl widespread, large drug trades, or no?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just visiting. I haven't really spent a lot of time looking it over, but I do want to say that I saw a video the other day about a guy that went down to Jamaica, and he went to a very dangerous city in Jamaica. And so he was walking around, and everyone was saying, don't walk around here, don't walk around here. But he did, and he talked to everybody, and it was a very dangerous place. But what he noticed was he had done previous videos about Philadelphia and San Francisco and all of these places. And he said, yes, it's dangerous here, but I don't see any drugs. I don't see the drugs that you see in these big cities. You don't see the fentanyl. You don't see these zombie people, nothing like this. It is worse than a third world country. I mean, Jamaica, where he was walking around, was absolutely third world, but it's worse than that in these places. I mean, it is, and I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think this is just stupid decisions by stupid politicians. This is a planned thing, and it's a very destructive thing that's going on right now.
Yeah, well, I think you could argue it's part of the 100-year plan that the Chinese started in 1949 to destroy us from within. It's just another way that they're attacking us. Eric, I want to hear what you have to say on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big problem with it is how drugs are normalized in America. I know a lot of kids who are 10 years old and on Adderall. I don't think children should be on any kind of pharmaceuticals. And I think people should have more conversations about how dangerous pharmaceuticals are in general, because that is what normalizes street drugs or gets people on a lot of them in the first place. But what you asked, Glenn, based off of what I've seen, like youth wise, there's not much of a drug scene in Europe compared to America. I think America has a very bad drug problem.
Okay. I appreciate that perspective. Don, your thoughts on this
Yeah.
fentanyl crisis?
Well, for one, Eric, you're a young guy. It's a breath of fresh air to hear you speak. Someone of your age group speaking the way you speak and the way you think. But
Thank you.
I have a stepdaughter and her husband. They live in Denver, Colorado. And I hate to say this, but they've turned woke. They're woke. They think, and they're a couple years older than you are, Eric, but they don't leave the house without Narcan because so many people in their community overdose on fentanyl all the time. And I said, you can't be around those people. You just can't. And then they were describing to me that even pharmaceutical drugs now, they're worried that the fentanyl has been put in these pharmaceutical drugs and they carry it just for people on prescription drugs as well. That's how bad it's gotten in Denver, which is probably one of the worst places, of course.
Yeah, then hardcore left-wing liberal, Soros DAs. Yeah, it's a bit of a gong show there. Randy?
Well, the only personal experience I have with this is we had a guy in our program at the gym that I work at, and he was there from the beginning. He was 32 years old. He was a medic in the Navy, but he ran with the Marines. And he was the guy that checked on everybody. You know what I mean? Like called everybody all the time. He just was a medic probably at heart and had a heart for service. But he did have a prescription pain problem, and it came and went, and it came and went like many do. And like I said, he was 32 years old, and then one night he went and got what was supposed to be an Ambien. It looked just like an Ambien from one of his buddies. But as it turns out, he took that pill at night, went to sleep at his mom's house. And when they went in the bedroom at 10 o'clock in the morning, he had passed away in the middle of the night sometime. And so it was a huge loss to us. And, that's one of those things, man, that's coming across the border. It's not just fentanyl that's going in illegal drugs. They're actually making pills look like the prescription's pill it's supposed to be, but it's actually fentanyl, which is highly dangerous, as we've all talked about, and I've been on fentanyl. I know because it was one of the things they put me on when I was in the burn ICU. And I had these little lozenges that I put in my mouth, and initially they were 400 micrograms. And if I wouldn't have been so drugged up at the time, I would have noticed that it was micrograms instead of milligrams. It's a big difference. And so in the beginning, those things, I would use them in the hospital. And when they sent me the pain management guy, he said, well, what do you think about those fentanyl lozenges? And at this time in the medical system, whether you were in DC or you were in San Antonio where I was, you saw people walking around with them in their mouth everywhere. And I said, well, look, those things don't even work for me. They're a waste of my time, and it doesn't help the pain. And you know what the guy tells me? Well, we do have 800 micrograms. So I said, well, look, I'll try them, which was the worst thing I ever did. I got so addicted on those things, and I didn't even know it, truthfully. I was, it was in a period when I went back from San Antonio back to Fort Campbell, and I showed up at work, which I was at 5th Special Forces Group. But I'll tell you, it doesn't matter what unit you're in the military. When you show up to work and they tell you, hey, look, man, you don't got to come to work every day, you're in real trouble. I was still a patient, basically, and that's why they told me that. And I understand now. But it left me sitting at home. And I had all these fentanyl pops that I was just going through like water. And again, I didn't even realize it and again, I was still married at that time. So my ex-wife, my wife at the time, we were talking about it at one point. And I'm like, these things, they don't even do anything to me. And she looked at me and said, oh, honey, you changed 30 seconds in the morning after you put that first one in, and wow. You just don't even realize it. And I was like, wow. And then, so I started watching. She went to work, and I noticed that day that, I'm sitting there watching my watch to when I can take another one, or when I go ahead and give in and take one beforehand anyway. And then I noticed the moment I put that thing in my mouth, I'm sitting here like this, moping around, watching that clock. But as soon as I put that pop in my mouth, I'm like skipping and singing, dancing through the house. And that's when I finally looked it up on the internet. And I was like, holy crap. I mean, before that, I'd never heard of fentanyl. And this was 2006, 2007. I'd never even heard that word. I didn't even know it was a drug. And so, and now I was in real trouble with it. It was very hard to come off of. I had a lot of withdrawals. It was one of the worst things that ever happened to me in my recovery was getting on fentanyl.
Wow, that's a heck of a story, Randy. I learned something new. I didn't know that previously. Mike, you want to wrap up here on this addiction and fentanyl stuff?
I mean, we have beat this horse to death a number of times. I think the only other thing that we can talk about is, we've discussed weaponization of this a billion times. But the over addiction also comes down to the fault also of big pharma. They push pills for so long, and now they're on the horse and they don't know how to get off.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll just add one last thing, because you're right. We have beat this to death. You can go to Next Distro, so nextdistro.org. Select your state. It's a federal website. It'll connect you to your state resources for Narcan, and fill out your information. A couple days later, they will send you 4 doses of 4 milligrams, which is the stronger of the two. There's 2 milligrams as well. And, a lot of people mistake an anxiety attack for fentanyl, and just be aware of this. If you are poisoned by fentanyl or overexposure to it, your heart rate will plummet. Don, what was it called when you were on Mount Everest and you had a lack of oxygen to the brain? Hypoxia, was it?
Hypoxia.
Yeah. I had high altitude pulmonary edema and cerebral edema, but it's just swelling of the brain and the lung cavity.
And lack of oxygen, essentially, to the
Yeah.
brain, right? And that's what fentanyl does. So if your heart rate's going up, you haven't been exposed to fentanyl. But if you're feeling intoxicated and your heart rate's plummeting, doesn't hurt to try, Narcan if you suspect that you've been exposed to fentanyl. All right, moving along. The next one here is a pretty good topic, and I'm going to go back to you, Jeff. Election insecurity and interference. I mean, you're in one of 5 ground zeros from 2020.
Yeah, we saw it in Phoenix, in spades, more than the outlying counties. And it was real frustrating to watch in real time as, they were rejecting ballots on the day of, just by the thousands, because they print a ballot and you fill it out and then it gets scanned. Well, the scanner wouldn't recognize the printed ballots because they changed the dimensions, but untold thousands of votes didn't get counted. And then what they were doing is they were setting them aside, and then instead of checking them by hand, they had several people saying, yeah, they would take the ones that failed to scan and they would just put them in the pile with the ones that had already been scanned. So you couldn't figure out which ones didn't make it, and they never got counted. To combat this, and we're seeing it here in Arizona, they're calling for volunteers. They need poll watchers. They need people to stand there. People are probably not going to try and steal votes if there's someone looking over their shoulder going, excuse me, what the hell do you think you're doing? And they need people to work in the polls. They need people to work in the countings, in the counting locations, to make sure to have a presence, because it's like little kids in high school. Kids will cheat if they give them the opportunity to cheat. The reason they don't cheat in high school is because the teachers are watching them.
Right.
And you kind of got to do the same thing to politicians. They're like high school kids, but not as mature.
Yep. pretty well said. I mean, if you haven't seen 2000 Mules, highly recommend that people do that, and that exposes a tremendous amount of the shenanigans that went on in the 2020 election. I'm just going to throw this out there quickly because we want to make some recommendations for what people can do. 2 weeks ago, Trump and the RNC announced an election integrity team where they already have 100,000 people signed up. They have SOPs, so standard operating procedures. They will have attorneys on call around the country. And if you're truly concerned, as you should be, with regards to the 2024 election, and you want Trump or an America First team to get back in the White House, highly recommend that you volunteer to help that organization, because of what you're saying, Jeff. It puts eyeballs on the problem. So we're only on 4 steps out of 25, and I think we need to pick up the speed a little bit. So there's tons of information out there on the election stuff that's happened. Like I say, volunteer to help. That's what Jeff said. Not really a lot more that we can recommend there. But Eric, I'm going to come to you on this one. The educational indoctrination of children, since by virtue of age, you're closer to the educational system than the rest of us are. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Do you mean more at a school level or like internet wise? Because I mean, the area I'm more of an expert on is internet wise, and this is something that Glenn and I talk about a lot. But social media, Google, big tech, they're just censoring any opposing viewpoints. And I can tell you from just everything that I've seen growing up, it's very woke, you know, and even speaking out, just talking about stuff like I talk about, I know most of my friends would just think I'm crazy probably, or just a bad person. So it's very indoctrinated.
What can be done about it?
I think homeschooling is a good step. If I had children myself, I'd probably homeschool them. I would be careful of what they have online as well. And I'd try to find communities in local areas that I could maybe have my kids meet kids of people that I agree with, you know, align with. That way they can have friends that are a good influence on them.
Yeah. Good advice. Well done. Mike Sterling, give me your thoughts on this educational indoctrination of our youngins.
I am going to go back and I'm going to hit 4 and 5 at the same time.
Fair enough.
And yeah, I'm going to say bring back tarring and feathering of politicians and communists. Well, actually, when it comes to communists, you need to bring back tossing them out of helicopters. But yeah, tarring and feathering of a lot of these idiots. I think that'd make people think twice.
I don't disagree. Do you have comments on this educational indoctrination of children?
That was my comment. Yeah. That needs to get onto there as well.
All right. So we need a national helicopter program to throw people out. All right.
We got plenty of helicopters.
Fair enough.
Well, I think when it comes to furthering or continuing education, I think that trade schools will make a big comeback instead of going to universities. That's what my kid went off to university. My daughter went through Kentucky, graduated, everything was fine. By the time my son got to college, he was like, I can't do this. And he didn't. He went to trade school, and, you know, now he's as happy as can be. But I think those will make a comeback for the reasons we're watching right now on the news, for all, you know, going on at all these Ivy League and, you know, elite universities.
Yeah, so on Wednesday of this week, Denny Chapman and his buddies from the Righteous Savages podcast had a very interesting discussion on the dire lack of toxic masculinity in our society. This is, you know, effeminate pattern of youngins, and that we need a big comeback of things like you're discussing, trades and men who are actually men. And our society's been poisoned to a large extent by all the processed foods, which destroy young men's testosterone levels. And, you know, the average 20-year-old today has a testosterone level of a 70-year-old man 20 years ago. So we could go down that rabbit hole, but pretty sure that's all the Chinese 100-year plan as well. Mike?
One thing that I did want to bring up, if we go back to the communist plan for the takeover of America from 50 some years ago, number 2, get control of the schools and teachers associations, soften the curriculum.
Yeah, well said. Does anybody else want to add anything as far as the educational indoctrination is concerned?
I had one thing, Chris, is I sent my daughter off for a 4-year degree in Texas, and I want a refund because she went in with a brain and came out without any common sense or without a brain. I mean, I'm serious. I want a refund, but you could say in one simple statement what happened to our schools. We replaced Bibles with pornography in elementary school. That's a huge change.
Yeah.
Don, have you tried turning her off and turning her back on again?
Yeah.
Restart.
Yeah.
Reboot. Send her
Yeah.
to Texas A&M.
Fair enough. Glenn, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just say, going back to nullification, there is no constitutional authority for there to be a Department of Education, and the states can. If I was DeSantis, I'd say, there is no. The Department of Education has absolutely zero authority here unless you can show me that there's constitutional authority for you to be here, which there isn't. So get out. And I think that's one of the. And then you can do that with the FDA, the CDC, the USDA, all of those things. They don't have, the federal government doesn't have the constitutional authority to make any of those bureaucracies. That's the swamp that Trump talked about. It's real. The bureaucracy. This is where the power is going to these people that are non-elected, and I don't think you can stop it at the state level. I don't care who gets elected as president. The only way to stop it, I believe, is at the state level, where the states just say, you can't come in here, get out.
Yeah, good point, Glenn. I mean, just the counter argument to that, and I'm not defending it whatsoever, is the feds then say, well, we're not going to give you these grants. We're not going to give you this funding for one program or another. So we have to make good decisions and not be sucked in by the almighty dollars, essentially what it boils down to. Did you want to add to that, Jeff?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say schools did better without the Department of Education. My parents were both educators. It was much better without it. So get rid of it. We have a Department of Education who educates nobody. We have a Department of Energy that produces no energy. We have a Department of Agriculture that pays farmers not to grow crops. We have a Department of Housing and Urban Development that doesn't produce any housing and doesn't develop any urban areas. We have so many parts of the government that don't do jack shit. We need to get rid of them.
Yeah, somebody recently asked me this question and asked what my thoughts were, and I said, simple. We need a great reset, just like Klaus Schwab and the WEF. But my idea of a great reset is to nuke all levels of government, go back to the 10 commandments, call it a day. We're good to go. We can handle it from there. So, all right, so let's move on to the next one. Again, we're only on number 6 now, the asymmetrical weaponization of justice. So I'll stick with you, Jeff, because I know you have some thoughts on this.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're using the government, or the government's using its agencies as an arm of the Democratic Party at this point. I kind of joke that the FBI is like the KGB, except it's the sword and shield of the Democrat Party instead of the Communist Party. We're hearing stories now, I don't know if they're confirmed or not, that the CIA, my old organization, had people involved on the whole January 6th thing. Completely not their job. 100% not their job. Or that they were talking to Facebook and all these people about, censoring stuff. Again, 1,000% not their job. CIA's focus is supposed to be 100% foreign, absolutely foreign. Yeah, can they operate in the United States? Yeah, if they're targeting foreigners. But that's it. They cannot recruit. You cannot collect information on a U.S. citizen. You're not supposed to be able to do any of that stuff. When I would meet with somebody and I had to get their background, I would tell them, yes, can I get your background? Can you get your date of birth? And if they didn't give it to me, they didn't have to give it to me. But it was all strictly voluntary, and it was just so we could get a security clearance for them. But yeah, there is just so much of the government is just completely out of whack and needs to be.
Yeah, well, I think at the gist of the day, there's no debate that the justice system is being used asymmetrically, being used, this is Obama version 3. We all know that this is his third term, and he's weaponized the DOJ and every other level of law enforcement against anybody who's America first. Just as well as he would say everybody on this panel here today is the number one threat to America. White middle-aged guys, we're the number one terrorist threat. Ignore those Hezbollah guys, but concentrate on the patriotic white male sort of thing. So instead of fleshing through the whole thing, because it's pretty obvious that's what's going on, I'd like to hear what people's ideas are. So I'm going to go across my screen. Randy, what can we do about this asymmetrical weaponization of the justice system?
Well, as an individual, I'm not sure there's a whole lot you can do about it in that regard. But you can, again, go back to your local area, your neighborhood, your city, your community, and you would have to start there, or move out to the country, move into the rural areas where you're not going to, you won't be completely shielded from it, but you're not living right in the middle of it either.
Yeah, I think I just interject that, the sheriffs are probably the best opportunity that we have to fix this kind of stuff, because they don't answer to the feds in any capacity whatsoever. Don?
Yeah, not to use the overused slogan, but we got to drain the swamp. Can you believe all these agencies have been politicized, weaponized? We have to go back to what we've been saying, elect officials who know there's a threat and have a real passion for wanting to remove that threat, which are weaponized agencies right now.
You just tweaked me on something there. I think I would also recommend that people support individuals like James O'Keefe, who exposes, all of this stuff going on. Otherwise, we wouldn't know. And Elon Musk, he's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. He's done a fair bit for free speech since he bought X. And there's a lot of stuff on X now that would have never been there before Elon had it. But supporting people who are doing the right things. Eric, have you got anything you want to throw in here?
Yeah, I mean, the woke agenda is great at emotional manipulation. I think that's their strongest tactic. So I'd just say have emotional discipline and just focus on logic. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Whoa, he's asking a lot.
Using the L word.
Well, Mike, do you want to comment before I go to Glenn?
Yeah, totally agree. Our sheriffs are absolutely the best line of defense that we have on this. Elect a good sheriff and then hold them to their oath. Get them to be able to be willing to look at the feds and go, no, get out of my county, because they don't answer to them. They answer to us.
Right.
Also, back to the communist plan for the disassembly of America. Number 35, discredit and eventually dismantle the FBI.
Well, they're discrediting themselves.
Yeah, I was fixing to say that. Very admirable goal. Glenn, do you want to
maybe that's part of the plan.
That's true.
Yeah, true. Glenn, do you want to weigh in before we move on?
Yeah, I just think we need to remember that the Constitution is the foundation. What Jeff was saying earlier, the Constitution is the foundation, and all laws that don't abide by the Constitution are illegal laws. We just can't accept those, and we just have to challenge illegal laws. And I would also just add that thank God for juries. I mean, we need to really be grateful for that. We need to step up and serve if we can, and we also need to recognize that juries have the power to basically exonerate somebody or even say something about the law. And I don't know exactly the legal power that they have to
jury nullification.
As far as a law goes. I don't really know as much as I need to on that one, but I know juries are very important.
I think at the very least, you're looking at some aspect of leveling the playing field. That those 12 individuals have the ability to somewhat level that playing field.
Right.
So next point, number 7, the destruction of private property rights. And what this is really driven around is things like the squatters' rights. So I don't know if y'all caught this. Last month there was a lady inherited a home in New York City. She changed the locks. The cops ended up taking her away because the squatters who were there said that they had a lease when they didn't have a lease. And I don't expect a whole lot to come out of New York State, but Kathy Hochul, the governor, did just rush a bill through and signed it into law, swinging the pendulum the exact opposite way, that gives people the ability to get squatters out of their property. But that's only one of many examples. I'll give one more before I go to the panel. So Glenn Beck recently commented on how his ranch is surrounded by federal property. And there are other ranchers in his area where the federal government's come along and just said, we're taking your property. We're designating this some sort of ecological, green belt zone, and here's your money, get out, sort of thing, and completely taking over their property. So, Jeff, give me your thoughts on this, because this one, I know your blood pressure probably goes way up when you hear about this.
Well, yeah, there's two issues. One thing in Arizona, a lot of the ranchers, the actual ranch they own is relatively small, but then they lease land from the Bureau of Land Management and all that. And so what they're starting to do now, we're seeing, is canceling those leases. So you're a rancher and you've only got 20 acres instead of 2,000 acres. And in Arizona, you need a lot of land to feed a cow because it's mostly desert. But the biggest one that just happened yesterday is our Sterling governor, who's an idiot, by the way, just vetoed a law that would allow the easier to evict squatters. You can call the sheriff, you can have them removed. She vetoed it because, we want to take care of the people who have legitimate leases or their family members or domestic abuse. And the Republicans have passed a law that we took care of all that. All that was in the law that, if you owned a house and you were kicking out your wife, you can't do it. Or if you had a lease and your landlord, there was some dispute and the landlord just wanted to boot you, but you still had a lease, can't do it. So all the things that all the reasons she gave for vetoing the bill were bogus. So she's just basically pro squatter. We need something. It was modeled on Florida's law that says, okay, hey, if you're a squatter and you don't have a legit lease, you're gone, period. And the cops will evict your ass.
Yeah, that just boggles my mind that a politician could vote against that. Eric, do you want to add something there?
Yeah, I can. So I was talking to someone recently in Hungary, and he said his grandparents went through socialism here, and they basically just took all private property away from everyone. So it's definitely something we have to defend.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Mike, you want to weigh in? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. And this has actually been a problem with the U.S. government for quite some time. Right here where I'm at, if you look at the entirety of the Tennessee River Valley, and they, in an effort to do good, putting in all the dams and the formation of the Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA. The U.S. government seized a whole lot of land when they put the dams on all this under eminent domain.
So I guess the question is, so I've got Don, Randy, and Glenn to go to before we wrap up this point. What can be done about this, Don? And I mean,
my answer is basic and simple. It's just who you elect in office. Basically, we got to be informed. Teach people what's going on if they're not informed, and elect the right people. I mean, imagine somebody trying to squat into one of our homes. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work, so we got to educate those who don't know any better and indoctrinate them back to what's right.
Fair enough. Randy.
Well, I think this is just a slippery slope of the erosion of our rights, right? You start taking away where you don't really have rights over your property. Next it's your own life. So then what do you need a weapon to protect? Nothing.
Fair enough. Glenn, you're batting clean up on this one.
Yeah, so you will own nothing and be happy. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. It's a plan.
But time out, Glenn. Take it away, Mike. You're on mute. You're on mute. Come on, you're missing the moment here.
You're muted.
Won't you will eat the bugs? Won't you will own nothing? Won't you will live in the pod? Won't you will be happy because the party says you will?
That's right.
Sorry to interrupt, Glenn. This is kind of one of these ongoing jokes we have on survival dispatch.
No, that's good. That's good.
I'm just gonna kind of try cover my mic a little bit. He's had some head injuries, okay, Glenn? So just so you know. But the VA says he's okay. So yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't want to be a broken record here, but you look at the Constitution, the federal government doesn't have. I mean, I think the Constitution gives the federal government the authority to take land for military bases, and I think there's a certain amount of land they're allowed to take, but that's it. That's the only authority the federal government has. And so again, the states can fight back on this, and that's the law. I'm not saying anything that is controversial. This is the law. Right. And that's the way that we've got to fight this, is we've got to use the law that is in place now and fight it that way.
Yeah, the biggest thing I'm taking away from this, Glenn, across the board, is that local county level is so critical. Mm-hmm. And if you can get that piece right, then you can scale up to the state level and hopefully beyond that. So let's go to the 8th item that is causing the destruction of our country, and that's the inflation and debt. Jeff?
Well, they're tied together, because the reason we have inflation is because the government is spending more money than it has, and so it either has to borrow it or print it. But either way, it's injecting trillions of dollars into the economy that the economy can't handle. That's economics 101, first day of class. And the only way to even begin to get this under control is to cut government spending. Somebody's rice bowl is going to get broken. Every penny the government spends goes into somebody else's pocket. We need to start slashing. And I looked at the wholesale reduction of government. If you lost the entire, Department of Education, all these, we've already talked about it. We need to do that, and we need to get people off the government tit. You look at what's going on in California. They raised the minimum wage to $20 an hour, so everybody's laying off these people. Okay, they're laying off young kids. They're 18 years old. They can't get a job because no one's going to pay them $20 an hour because they don't know anything. So what are they going to do? They're going to sit around, and the government will give them money to keep them out of trouble. We let in 8 million people in the last 3 years, or maybe even 10, who knows? But they're all getting money, tons of money. They're getting gift cards or Visa cards with $5,000, $10,000. All that is causing inflation to go through the roof. They don't have to work because they get free money. And you're just dumping more and more money into an overheated economy. You're going to get inflation.
But Joe Biden and Janet Yellen says that there's no inflation. They fixed it. It's gone away now. You can get the memo?
Well, the inflation is up and the GDP is down. Just look at today's report.
Right. Interesting comment, though, on the $20 minimum wage in California. The kiosks, so in other words, the computer interface where people can order their food, they're sold in pairs so that there's a disaster recovery protocol, right? So if a kiosk fails, then somebody can just unplug it, plug another one in, and keep the restaurant going or whatever the business is. The cost for 2 of them, because they're sold in pairs, is $30,000 at $20 an hour at 2,000 hours a year for a full-time position. That's $40,000 a year, but McDonald's turns over their entire staff except for management every 3 months. And some of them are even worse, like Burger King's even worse than that. So the cost is way higher than $20 an hour when you have that level of attrition and churn. So it's no wonder that the company's going by the $30,000 kiosk that comes with a complete backup, and they don't have to worry about going down at all. So
we're losing these jobs due to automation because of stupid things like a $20 hour minimum wage. But at the same time, the government says we don't have enough workers, so we have to import all these illegals.
Correct.
Those two things don't mesh.
They don't square at all.
No.
Does anybody else want to add anything on the inflation and debt piece before we move on? I'll take that as
I would like to.
Go ahead, Glenn. Sorry.
I just want to say, if you look at the entire list of 25, I think the foundation is the money, and because I think the people behind it all are the central bankers. I think they're the ones pulling the strings, and I think this is their end goal: is they want to implement this central bank digital currency. They want to do the financial reset. All of this other stuff is distraction, and they want to divide us. They want to distract us. They want to do all of this stuff. They want their power. Their power is the money. And so this is really the foundation, I think, of what they're doing. And I think they're looking to create something massive like war or something like that they can. They know what they've created is going to come crashing down, and they don't want to be blamed as the cause for that crash. So that's why all of these things are happening. They just want us to look over here and look over here while we're doing this. We're putting our financial system in place, our money system in place, and that's how they maintain their power. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I don't disagree, Glenn. I actually think that the only way to fix this mess that we have, this financial mess, is for the whole system to collapse. I don't know that you can fix it the way it is right now. Randy?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. So the reality is, for what these international bankers and all these other people that are on board with the global one thing are they can't do that until they break the United States financially.
Right.
Once they break the dollar permanently, and people are like, oh, we're already broke. We're not there yet, but we're close. When it breaks, you're going to know. We will all know that day, that hour, we will all know. And they can't do that until then. And they're not going to be blamed for it, Glenn, because they've done it in many wars before, and even the Vatican back from the 14th century. Because why? When the United States fails, who's going to have any money? Those guys. They're going to be the only ones with the money. So then they're going to get to reset the rules because they've got the money. So then they will switch it all at that point, and they're going to loan you money. They'll loan the United States government money and other governments to get them playing along, and that's how that's going to roll.
So the golden rule: he with gold makes the rules.
So the next point actually plays into that, Randy, and that's the global depopulation agenda. So my theory on this is, and we can get into the specifics, but the whole purpose behind, Agenda 2030, which is to get the world population down to 1 billion. It's a whole lot easier for the elites to control 1 billion people than it is to control 8+ billion people. And so it kind of plays into that. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this global depopulation agenda, the Agenda 2030 from the WEF?
Well, yeah, they've kind of gone back and forth on that. They did the whole one-child policy in China because they're getting too many people, and now they're like, oh crap, we don't have enough people. Populations naturally level off. If you look at our population, you look at India's, you look at China's, they come up, and then they plateau because there's a natural mix. It can't go up forever because we just run out of planet. But with the agenda, it's like, which people are going to make it, and there's cross ways here. You need more taxpayers to support people's in their Social Security in their golden years, because we've set up a system that's not sustainable. It's a Ponzi scheme. It requires more people to put in as other people are taking out. If we had restructured or structured Social Security to be you put in, you get out what you put in within, with investments and interest, and nobody else can draw from it, the system would be fine. It'd basically be a giant 401k, but it isn't. It's a Ponzi scheme. So to keep stability in the country, they have to keep pushing it. But at some point, it's going to collapse. there just aren't going to be enough people, and you say they want to bring the whole thing down, that's a great way to do it. If you don't have enough young people to put into the system to maintain it, it's going to collapse. And then you're going to have millions and millions of people with nothing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Glenn, do you want to weigh in on this? I think you're on mute.
You're on mute, man.
And we
pulling a me.
lost Don Man.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add on the next 2 points, really.
Okay,
Honestly.
fair enough. Eric, do you want to weigh in?
No, I think I'll sit down on this one too.
Fair enough. Randy, Mike, anybody want to add any more comments to the global depopulation agenda? And actually, good point on Glenn's part there. Record low fertility and plummeting birth rates. They're kind of tied together.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. I mean, we've all become fairly aware over the last few years that human beings are too stupid to exist in large numbers.
Well, there is that old saying, never underestimate the stupidity of a large group of people.
Yeah.
They will hang you, even if you're not guilty.
And have done so.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Eric.
I'll just say one thing. I mean, I think it's concerning that population is even a question, because it's just such a natural, it's a right to life. You know, if I would choose to have children, that's my own decision and my partner's decision. And, you know, I don't want to die from starvation or anything. It's just such a weird topic that there's even a discussion about, honestly.
Fair enough. Glenn, I would compliment you on doing a very good job raising Eric, by the way. He's mature beyond his years.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
You
Yeah,
did
Glenn's
really-
a great father.
Yeah,
I will say that I know that there's been many studies that have proven the exact opposite. So no matter how many of these elites believe that that's what we need to do and there's not enough resources on the planet to feed everybody, there's been studies, that actual true studies, that have proven that to be false.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm familiar with that. And that's really interesting, because the next point was unaccountable federal bureaucracies, which we've already covered. So I'm going to move to point number 12, which plays to that, Randy, and that's the food supply.
Oh,
And here in America in particular, we have this toxic food supply. This is a topic that my wife has a lot of knowledge on. And Dr. Jason Dean's a good friend of ours, and Cindy and him are constantly discussing this, constantly finding these strange ingredients added to food. Like there's now things showing up that says quality enhancement ingredients. But
no real ingredients.
Right. And so with Glenn and Eric overseas right now, I'm going to ask if they've noticed this or not. But if you look at a product that's the same brand in America versus Europe, and different laws as far as what can go into them, breakfast cereals are a great example. There's this list of chemicals here in America that you can't even pronounce. And when they show the European label, there's a fraction of the number of ingredients. Glenn, Eric, you guys want to weigh in on this first?
Yeah, I don't speak German, so I can't read it. I don't know what it says.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true. A lot of people over here talk about as a stereotype for Americans that we just eat a bunch of processed garbage. And yeah, the chemicals are a big problem, and it shows that they're playing like 3D chess. They're fighting against us in ways that most people don't even think about. You know, it's surprising to think that your food could be a big of a component, you know, that your testosterone drops and you become less smart, whatever, just based off of your nutrition. So they're attacking on many ways.
You now have lettuce in America that has been contaminated with mRNA technology that alters your DNA and your immune system. That's that's as evil as it gets. Sorry, Glenn, go ahead.
Well, no, the thing that I do want to talk about, and I'm surprised it's not on the list here, is the global attack on farmers, because there is an absolute attack on small farmers. And this is big time here in, I mean, it's actually surprising that Netherlands is like what, the number 2 exporter of food in the world or something like that.
Yeah,
it is. And but they're totally screwing the farmers over here, and every country they're using a different approach with, but they're doing the approach that's customized for whatever that country needs. And they're just doing it to seize the farms. I mean, it's blatant, but at least the people here are standing up and fighting it. I mean, you've got the tractors going out and protesting, or the farmers going out with the tractors. France, they're just really they're. Did you see they're building? They're walling the parliament in so that the politicians couldn't get out, and they're pretty
spraying buildings with manure. It's
yeah,
glorious. It's absolutely,
Yeah.
it's a very American thing what the French are doing.
yeah. But the Americans aren't doing it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there. I think I saw a number of there was 150,000 small farms lost in America in the past 5 years, and there is definitely an attack on the small farmer. They want to gain control of the food supply, and I think that's a terrifying thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure it's just the small farmers here in America. You know, we do have a real problem with it. You look at, you know, Joe Biden comes out right after he was elected and said there's going to be a food shortage, and that's going to be real. And then you see all these food manufacturers of different types of food, and meat and eggs and milk and everything else burning to the ground all of a sudden.
Hundreds of them.
You know, you have China, and you have what's the big guy, the Microsoft guy, Bill Gates.
Bill Gates.
Both of them are buying up farmland in the United States, and they're shutting the farms down. They're not buying them to keep the farms going or to improve them. They're actually shutting them down. And to the point, my neighbor knows a guy that just came back, I think it's from South America, but he went over there and lost 50 pounds, comes back and he gained it back, didn't change his diet at all in either place. It's just the difference in food. When I went to Israel this last August, was a big eye opener for me, because we go at one point, we stopped for a little mall area for lunch, and there's a McDonald's in there. I go in there, and the McDonald's hamburger is this freaking big around, and the meat patty's this big. It looks like a Whataburger from 20 years ago.
Mhm.
You can't find a burger like that in the United States unless you go to a sit-down restaurant. You know what I mean? So there's definitely a difference in what we're being served, because you go look at the McDonald's hamburgers here, and you almost can see through the meat patty. You know,
Right.
they're not even as big as your palm anymore.
Meats.
That's right.
So
So it is a huge problem.
it is, and I'm gonna go to Mike to back clean up on this in a second, because he does a lot for his family on this topic. But just want to throw a few things out there. Currently, less than 1% of Americans have gardens. At the end of World War II, 50% of Americans got 100% of their vegetables from their backyard garden. So that trend needs to change, number one. Number two, processed foods in America have been poisoned for years. And we're all old enough, except for Eric, to remember in the 1980s, there was a war on fat. And when you take fat out of food, it tastes like shit. So to make the food taste better, they poured copious amounts of sugar into it. Sugar lights up the cerebral cortex the exact same way as cocaine. It's actually produced the same way as cocaine, and it's more addictive than cocaine. And if you look at Native Americans prior to us coming here, 50% of their diet was animal fat, and they were extremely lean. Fat is not the problem. Sugar is the problem. And when you have a high sugar intake, which has a high glycemic count, obviously, when your blood sugar falls, what do you have to do to get it back up again? You need to eat more food. So if you eat more food that's laden with sugar, what happens? You're into the next crash, and you have to eat more food. And it essentially turns you into a fat absorption machine, for lack of a better term. So again, this is a topic that my wife has more knowledge on than I do, but she's always pointing things out to me. But one recently that I wasn't aware of, and I know for a fact Mike it probably is the distinction between grass-fed meat and grass-finished meat. When it says grass-fed, that doesn't mean that they didn't eat anything but grass. It just means until the final stage of their life, they ate grass, and then they plumped them up with a bunch of garbage food before they sent them off to the butcher. And so there's a pretty important distinction there. But Mike, talk in terms of how difficult it is to have a homestead, to grow your own food and to look after your animals. This is not something that you just decide, oh, I'm going to plant some seeds and I'm good to go.
No. So, and I know a lot of people that have their little seed vaults and they're like, oh, I'll just grow these. Hey, I hate to break this to you, but those seed vaults are not attuned for the area that you live in. I lost entire crops by not understanding what I was doing when I started gardening, going down, just getting seeds that would just get, and here in the Tennessee River Valley, just the humidity and the fungus will wreck any seeds that are not properly from here. You get that, then you get the bugs, and between the bugs and the fungus here, you get your butt kicked. But learn about nutrition. One, right? Because you got to know what you need to eat. Look at the natives, take the lessons from the natives about what they grew, right? The Three Sisters is a huge thing here in this portion of the country, right? So you're growing corn, peas or beans, and you're growing a squash, all in harmony with each other because they feed each other. That's a big thing. So once you learn about your nutrition, then get good quality heirloom seeds that are proper for your area. Southern Seed Saver Exchange, I'm not affiliated with them, but boy, those are the people that I go with. Southern Seed Saver Exchange is amazing. I get all kinds of great quality seeds from them. I very rarely have a dud out of those bags. Then make your mistakes. Make your mistakes now when it's a 17-cent mistake as opposed to your family going hungry over the winter because you made a mistake. All right. It ain't easy. And you got to make those mistakes now. The same goes for chickens. The same goes for goats, all that. You got to make your mistakes now.
Yeah. Well said, Mike. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah. One thing too, I'm in the Southwest. I'm in the desert. I'm not in Alabama. We have different climate, different everything. But look at your native foods that are in the wild. In Arizona, we have more mesquite trees than you know to do with. But the mesquite bean, the pod, the whole bean can be, when it dries and you collect it off the tree before it hits the ground, you can grind that whole thing up and it makes flour. You can eat the beans. Palo Verde trees, when they put out their little seed pods, when they're green, you can pop them open, eat them like a pea. As they dry, you can again grind them up and use them as as a flour. A prickly pear cactus, you take the spines off. You can just sit there and saute that thing, salt and pepper, and it tastes like asparagus. Prickly pear fruit, you burn the little spines off with a torch, boom, you've got something. You can make jellies, you can make jams, you can make juices. There's tons of free food if you know what you're looking for. And the safe bet is if you see an animal like a deer or something eating it, it's probably not poisonous. Otherwise, you'd have a lot of dead deer.
The entire eastern half of the United States is just absolutely covered in oak trees.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, guess what's edible? Acorns. You've got to process them. You've got to wash all the tannins out of them first. But on average, a mature white or red oak will drop 200 pounds of acorn meat in a 3-week period. That's what the natives used for making their flour.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So I'm a little cognizant of time here. We're only halfway through the list, so I'm going to change up the format ever so slightly. I'm going to mention the topic and one person can speak to it, then we'll move on to the next one. So topic number 13 is vaccine and pandemic disinformation. Does anybody want to speak to that? I will speak to that then. So, and here's what I'll say is go on over to Cloud Hub and look up the channel Vax Choice, VAXXCHOICE. There is a ton of information over there on this very subject. And beyond that, I don't want to dive too deep into it because we'll go beyond being demonetized and we'll end up getting strikes and thrown off YouTube if we say too much more on that particular subject. So moving on to number 14, the transcontagion and sterilization of children. I'll preface it before I pick somebody by saying up until 2018, the World Health Organization classified transgenderism and body dysmorphia as a mental illness. And lo and behold, we just had another situation yesterday where another girl who thinks she's a guy who's taking testosterone wrote a 120-page manifest on how she was going to shoot a school up and kill a bunch of people. You start injecting testosterone into men, let alone women, you're going to raise the androgenic level, which will raise the aggression level. I might know a thing or two on this subject. Glenn, it's all you.
Yeah, I think this is a clear case of mind control and propaganda. And it's a, you know what, it makes me think of that movie Trading Places, where there's those guys that make a bet on whether they can do something. And I just imagine these people that are at the very high levels of the CIA doing their mind control and saying, you know, look, I think we are so good at mind control that we can convince people that what is the most fundamental thing that any human knows? It's that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. Right. And we can confuse that to the point where they don't know that. But then we're going to take it further and we're going to say, we're going to get feminists who have always been fighting for the rights of women to actually fight for men's rights to infringe on women's rights. And they're not even going to realize that they've done a 180 on it. And so I think they're just showing us how good they are with mind control and their ability to absolutely flip people 180 degrees without their knowledge, and people just still fight for it just like they were, but they're doing it 180 degrees now.
Listen, on at least 2-3 times a week, Jeff, you know, former CIA operative, he does his, mind control juju over the rest of us, and we don't even realize it till we watch the video after it's published, sort of thing. So I'm with you 100% on that, Glenn. But interesting take on that subject, Glenn. Very interesting. I hadn't heard somebody put it quite that way before, and that's seriously good food for thought. The next topic is number 15, is overprescription of pharmaceuticals. We've actually already touched on this one already. So again, being cognizant of time, I'm going to move past that. But the next one, the destruction of the nuclear family and parental rights. Somebody touched on this earlier. Can't remember who it was. Of course, we lost Don because he had another appointment. Who wants to tackle that one? Destruction of the nuclear family and parental rights. Jeff? You're on mute. You're on mute, Jeff.
Something I just saw in the paper, I think it was yesterday. The UN is going around telling traditional, what they call trad wives, women who want to stay home and like raise their children. They're calling them uncompensated caregivers, and basically saying, "Oh, it's hurting women's rights by when you stay home and take care of your children." So what they were pushing for is government daycare for everybody, so all these women can go out and work. So you're going to say, okay, you can't stay home and raise your kids, but we're going to hire someone else to raise your kids for you. And oh, by the way, you might get that job, so you'll get paid to raise someone else's kids, but you won't raise your own. It's that kind of insanity that it's so ass backwards. It's like the whole trans thing. Since when is raising your own children a bad thing? No one's going to love your kids more than you.
Right. Mike?
Number 40, discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Number 41, emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents, attributed prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to supportive influence of parents.
Yeah, unbelievable.
There you go. I think that further leads to enslavement, doesn't it? You don't need to raise a family. We need you to go to work.
Yeah.
The party will raise your children.
All right, moving on to number 17, DEI and the new racism. Mike,
Didn't earn it.
you want to roll with this one, Mike?
No, you know how I get.
That's why I asked if you wanted to roll. Randy, you got anything to say on DEI?
Well, we all know it's wrong. That's what it is. This is just part of the evil plan. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
And then it also leads down that path of what we've seen talking about earlier, the Western culture, right? Don't be exceptional. That's racist. You
Yeah.
don't need to do that. You know, you don't need to have standards. Why would we have standards? It all falls into that same line of thought, and it's just a further erosion of the rights. And then, you know, basically telling the average common person, you're nothing. You mean nothing. You are nothing. So just get used to it and accept it.
So before we move on to the next one, I just want to dovetail off of what you had to say there, Randy. Number one, Boeing has become a huge proponent of DEI because so you have the World Economic Forum and the global banking system who've been pushing this ESG thing, right? So environmental social guidelines and giving companies scores. And if a company has a lower score, then they don't get financed by the, you know, the global banking system. So very few companies have significant liquidity. Target's a great example. So Target needs a line of credit, multiple lines of credit to operate. So if they have a low ESG score, they can't tap into a line of credit. So they have to toe the line on all this, you know, baloney insanity stuff. The reason I mentioned Boeing is because of all the airlines, they've embraced DEI more than any other airline, and it is a daily occurrence for a problem with a Boeing plane across all airlines. There was one a couple days ago on takeoff, a 737, the landing gear fell off just after it left the ground. If it had been higher, if it had been in the air and had to land, you would have been looking at a whole bunch of dead people. But I swear to God, daily occurrence at Boeing of having problems that would have never happened before. And the reason that this is happening is because people have got two concepts confused. Equality of opportunity does not equal equality of outcome. And the DEI is all about facing equality of outcome down people's throats when we're not all equal. You know, it's just like men and women not being equal, and Denny and you know, the Righteous Savages podcast, where anybody who says that anybody who watches Netflix and thinks that men and women are of equal strength, you know, Mike knows because he's heard me say this a million times. It's almost as bad as Mar-a-Lago, but I competed in powerlifting for a very long career on our national team. There's not a woman in the world that can come close to any of my world records. So to say because we watch Netflix and 120-pound girl's going to beat up a room of 6 guys the size of us is just complete and utter bullshit. And it's the confusion between equality of opportunity, equality of outcome. And the last thing I'll make is you open this can of worms too, is that the dropping of standards. We can't have these high standards for math, science, and all these other things because somebody may not pass and it might be derogatory or hurt their feelings. Okay, how about try harder?
Or in medical school or in flight school or pilot school. But, you know, to the point, just one story real quick.
Sure.
There was a pilot that apparently a couple of the airlines tried to hire. And he's one of those that fell under these DIA rules. And but he couldn't, you know, every time they put him in the simulator and put him in a stressful event in a plane up there, he would just start pushing buttons. He didn't do what he was, you know, not what was taught. He just started pushing buttons. Long story short, Amazon goes ahead and hires this guy. And you can guess what happened. He crashed the plane and killed everybody on board. And that's a true story. It happened a year or two ago.
Well, and last comment on this before we move on to the next one is you are no longer required to pass an LSAT to enter law school anymore. So do you want an attorney who couldn't pass the LSAT because equality of opportunity, equality of outcome got, you know, mixed up together? Probably not, right?
Well,
you know,
most politicians are lawyers.
Touche.
Good point.
All right, moving on to point number 18, moral and societal decay. Eric, I want to go to you because you raised some good points on this already, and I'm very impressed, being in your mid-20s, thinking at the level that you think of. So I'll let you take this one.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's a hard one to answer. There's a lot of components that go to it. I think a big part is the emotional manipulation that goes with it. Like if we look at the last example, there's a guilt. If you're a white male, there's going to be a guilt with that. And then you get rewarded if you, like, for example, if I was transgender, then I'd be celebrated. So it's just an emotional game. So I think part of the moral decay is trained, but then there's a big component too with social media. And I mean, that's a huge component, really, is the censorship going on.
Yeah, I think in terms of the exposure, the stuff you were exposed to versus the rest of us, order of magnitude difference. Like it was a big deal for the rest of us, when your uncle or father had a Playboy magazine or something. It was like, oh my goodness, that's an earth-shattering thing versus the poison that's on the internet these days. So next topic is the financing of endless foreign wars. Jeff, I want to go to you on this.
Yeah, there's, Eisenhower warned us of the military industrial complex. And, he was a general. He won World War II.
Mm-hmm.
He knew something. He knew what was going on. And what we're seeing is, I have nothing against defense contractors. If you need a tank, someone's got to build it. But what we're seeing is part of the thing with these endless wars is one, it does pump a lot of money into the defense contractors. And we just released ATACMS, the better upgraded ATACMS to the Ukraine, and people were screaming. But if you look, these are the ones we built in the late 80s and some in the early 90s that are expired. So they get rid of those. They go kill Russians with them, and then we got to buy new ones to replace them. Who profits from that? Well, whoever builds ATACMS, if it's Raytheon or Lockheed or whoever. Again, nothing against those guys. But if we are basically killing people so that companies can make a profit, that goes to your moral decay right there.
Boy, does it ever.
And all these people trying to push us to get involved in Ukraine. It's like, look, I feel for the Ukrainian people. They got a bad deal here, but that doesn't mean I want my son to go over there and die for them. If my son wants to fight to defend my country, great. But let's, there was a political solution to this, I don't know, 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. We let it slide. So now we're going to spend billions upon billions. And, the Ukrainians have lost, 500,000? I mean, 500,000 people dead.
Correct. 500,000 soldiers. Yeah.
How is that logical? So Lockheed Martin can turn a profit?
Mike?
George Orwell, 1984. The war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous.
Very well said.
It's those people are making money. The wealthy are making money. And it's also a good, like you look at Ukraine, how much do you think they've laundried through there? How much money do you think they've laundered?
Yeah.
It's
corruption. The corruption is unimaginable.
Someone had a video on X of the houses of senior Ukrainian officials. They're all brand new mansions.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I joked, I put a thing up saying, the Ukrainian officials, as soon as this last bill passed, they all booked flights for the south of France to buy real estate and for Switzerland to open bank accounts.
Yeah, insanity. So moving along to point number 20, the sprawling surveillance state. This is Glenn and Eric 100%. So you want to start, Glenn?
Yeah, so this is really I was saying the banks are the core of this, but the core of what they're doing and the control that they want is through surveillance. It's powered through surveillance. And we always hear the term information is power, but we have to take that a step further and say, when they have information about you, they have power over you. And I don't think people have any idea how much information they're gathering about us. It is really shocking like for example, every single Google product that they make is specifically designed to steal your data. That's what they are. It is a Trojan horse. If you're using Chrome, if you're using Google, if you're using Gmail, Google Docs, whatever, it is specifically designed to steal your data. And then that data is being used against you. And we can see what's happening with this now with the Chinese social credit system. They are using surveillance to enslave their people. And I think that's what is happening in the Western countries now is these people are looking at what's happening in China and saying, we want that. And I think it is a very scary scenario where we're going is, central bank digital currencies, digital ID, which is the next point, and then the social credit system. It is all coming together, and it is enslavement. They are planning to enslave humanity with this.
Glenn, could you go into a little bit of detail for our subscribers on what a social credit system is, or at least what they're using in China?
Yeah, so social credit system is just like a financial credit system where you get a high score and you get a low score. And so, but the social credit system it's not just financial, it's everything. It's everything that you do. From in China, do you pick up after your dog? Do you go visit your mother at least once a month? And you can say, okay, well, those are good things, right? What about if you speak negatively against the government or the Communist Party, or if you are a investigative journalist and you want to investigate corruption in the government, then you're going to get a low score. And the people with high scores get rewarded, and then the people with low scores get penalized, and your score can get so low that you can get blacklisted. And if you're blacklisted in China, you can't fly on a plane, you can't take a train, you can't take a bus. So they have a stated goal of, if you are blacklisted, how do they say it? They say, if you have a high score, you're as free as a bird. If you have a low score, you can't move an inch. And so that's their stated goal, but it's not just geographic restrictions. They're also doing their financial restrictions. So people with a low score can't get loans, they can't get good jobs, they can't, because the companies they also have a social credit score. Then there's the social side of things, where if I am blacklisted and I call you, Chris, you're going to get a message on the phone that says, this person that's calling you is blacklisted. If you answer this phone, you will have negative score against you. Do you want to answer this call? And so who's going to answer that call? No one's going to answer that call, right? So that person is socially isolated, geographically isolated, financially isolated. And you quickly learn, okay, well, I better do this, or I better do this. And you've got people, it is slavery. It is literal slavery. And then when they add in the central bank digital currency, which is programmable. So this is programmable currency. It'll be tied into the social credit system. And if you if your carbon score, because we're all going to get a carbon credit score, if you use too much carbon this month, then your electric car won't charge to full charge, or your electric car might only drive 30 miles this week instead of, 300 miles or whatever. And this is all being put in place now. All the pieces are there. If you go on Google Flights right now, there's a carbon credit score behind each flight. That is not for your benefit to say, okay, I'm going to choose a better flight because it's better for the environment. It's there because one of the pieces that they're putting in place for the puzzle. And that, I mean, they've got all the pieces. They just need to pull it together. They need to have an excuse to pull it together.
Yeah, I've seen some European countries that are in the early steps of this. I think it might have been France actually, where they want to limit people to X amount of plane flights per year. And so like those very nascent steps into this social credit score. Eric, do you want to add anything before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, it's complete tech totalitarianism. They decide what's good and they decide what's bad. So they have complete control over your entire life. And the final thing I'll say is Glenn has a really good point that he brings up a lot, is if Great Britain had this level of control during the Revolutionary War, or then the founding fathers would have been rounded up and shot before there's ever any form of rebellion.
Long before.
Yeah,
Yep.
Exactly. Point number 21, the centralization, consolidation of government power. We've already discussed that. We've discussed that supporting good people at the local level, especially the sheriff's level, is a good thing. Next one is the destruction of trust in institutions. Who wants to field that one? Not everybody at the same time. Come on, you.
As someone who used to be one of those institutions, I used to be proud of my service in the CIA. And the irony is, when I couldn't tell anybody I was doing it. Now that I can tell people, I'm kind of almost embarrassed by what they've become. And I've seen it with the FBI. I worked with the FBI my entire career. A lot of really good guys. I don't recognize the FBI I see today. And I think it's by design. I mean, you look at the people they're putting in charge of these institutions. You look at, they're totally unqualified, and they seem to be consciously just politicizing and destroying the institution. And all you have to do is politicize it, and you've alienated half the country. So half the country doesn't trust the FBI. Half the country doesn't trust the CIA.
Yeah.
And that's not good for the country. I mean, I always tell people, if the FBI knocks on your door, I don't care if they're asking for what time it is, don't answer.
There's a gentleman out of Oklahoma named Wayne Wicketser, who's 87 years old, career FBI guy, served at the same time as Hoover, and was very vocal in his opposition of Hoover. And to this day, speaks frequently on the topic of the damage that's been done to the reputation of the FBI and how it went from, a good organization to exactly what you're describing right now. The crazy thing is, 87 years old, been retired for many years. He's blowing the doors off of a scam right now in Oklahoma on money related to COVID, and how there are companies in Oklahoma who donated, say, $500 to a politician, and 6 months later got $500,000 of COVID money approved by the state level. It's just crazy. But 87 years old, good for him. He's one of the good ones still left alive. Yeah. Number 23. So
hang on, I want to
go ahead.
I just want to add one thing to that.
Sure.
The reality of it is, Chris, they have to destroy both of these organizations. They have to discredit both of them, because if both of them are doing their job as designed and as written, none of this would be going on, and they wouldn't be able to do what they want to do. That's a fact.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more, Randy. Very well said. Number 3, the censorship industrial complex. Glenn and Eric, this is y'all's wheelhouse again. And as you both speak to this particular topic, I'd like you to tell us the services that you guys offer as well.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I do what I do with privacy and teaching people privacy is because it's essential for freedom. And I believe that to the core. We need to have freedom of speech. We need to be able to get our news from wherever. And you can see this is a globally coordinated attack on freedom of speech right now. And you can see this. Australia is just going crazy with this. The UK, the EU, they're all trying to pass laws that talk about misinformation, disinformation, all of that stuff. If we allow this to happen, that is going to be the end of it all. I mean, freedom of speech is what keeps keeps freedom alive. And so yeah, and that's really kind of the going to your point of we need to be able to speak freely to ourselves. If we're talking to somebody that we know, we need to be able to talk and speak our minds without thinking that there's somebody looking over our shoulder. And we need to be able to write what we want to write, and be in our home and just live our lives privately. That's really been the default for all of human history. And it's only now that we are in this new world where Google and Amazon and all of these things are listening in right in our homes. And we have to wake up to this intrusion, because we don't have any instinctive awareness of what's going on here. We have to become aware of it. And so that's kind of what we do. We teach people, we have courses that teach people how to be private and secure. It is possible to get private and secure to stop the flow of information. And that's what we do.
That's awesome. Eric, do you want to add anything before we move on?
Yeah, well, we designed the courses in a way that anyone can take. Before Glenn started, when people talked about online privacy, it was just kind of tech geeks talking to tech geeks. And we are the first ones to really, besides Edward Snowden, obviously, to be talking about it from a privacy standpoint or from a freedom standpoint and trying to educate the normal person. So the courses are designed very easily, and we recommend tools that are convenient and can prevent censorship as well, so you can get valuable information online with them.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Eric. Number 24, we're almost there. State media propaganda. So somebody in the comment section will remind me, because I'm going to forget what the name of it is again, but there was an act, something Smith, I believe, that was around for a very long time, that said that the government could spread propaganda outside of America, but not inside America. And then Obama gutted that. And we went from crappy mainstream media that was infotainment to downright evil mainstream media that's propagandatainment, complete and utter bullshit. And we have an educational system that teaches kids to memorize and regurgitate and not think in critical terms. So many people are programmed to think, well, it's on the mainstream media, it must be true. And then they memorize the talking points and they repeat the talking points, like the fine people hoax from North Carolina, trying to skew what Donald Trump said, which was the furthest thing from the truth. So Randy, Mike, or Jeff, one of you guys want to jump on this one? What do you got, Mike?
Yeah, I got some points.
Okay, go ahead, Randy.
I would say really we've got a state-sponsored news now, just like if you were in China or somewhere else. And the biggest, the clearest it ever was in 2020 and COVID and all that stuff. When I saw that our press, our mainstream media was using the same talking points and the same information that China was putting out, I knew there was a problem, because that's never happened before in the United States. You know what I mean? Where we were putting out the same thing like what the China government was saying. And the other point to it is, when you look at, like, I guess we have, hundreds maybe of different kinds of channels and cable and all these networks, but they're all owned by 6 families at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So, used to, when we grew up, me, you, Chris, all the older guys on here, there was a difference between the local news and the national news. And there's almost no difference now. And then it doesn't matter which part of the country that you're in, they all start saying the same verbiage at the same time. And that's when you know something is coordinated. That's what we do.
So Randy, Mike, and I are all products of 1969. We're all the exact same age. When we grew up, I'll just pick 1980 as an example. There were over 600 independent news organizations in our country. You now have 5 conglomerates that own 97% of the news outlets. And that's where you get the parroting from one to the next. Mike, you want to weigh in?
Yep. Number 20 on the list, infiltrate the press, get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, policy making positions. Number 21, gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures.
It's Obama's playbook.
Yeah.
Well,
This is
and
the communist this is the communist list for taking over the United States from 58 years ago.
Right.
and it's not just everybody saying the same thing. It's making sure those who dare not to say the same thing are censored.
That's
And
right.
we saw that with COVID. I mean, the infamous I word. If you said that, you were kicked off of you were kicked off of Twitter, or you were kicked off of LinkedIn. If you dared to question the party line, they kicked you off. And then, of course, 90% of that turned out to be 100% what we complained about was true.
Not if you did, Jeff, if you do. So I can tell
Yeah,
you
well,
right
still,
now
yeah,
that
it's
if
true.
we mention that particular
Item.
yes, to this day, that the video will be taken down. So Dr. Michael Fabian is a very esteemed surgeon in Central North Florida, former head of surgery at Halifax Medical, 100 and some odd, 163, I think, surgeons under him. One of the owners of North Florida Surgeons. They have 300 surgeons on staff. He had a look at Contingency Medical's emergency medical kit for us, so that, say it's 7 p.m. on a Friday night, somebody in your family's sick, you've got a Z-Pack in this kit. You don't have to, wait, or you don't have to go to urgent care. He mentioned that during their onboarding process, they ask, are you planning on leaving the country anytime soon? And if you were, they would include that particular item in case you got any waterborne viruses. And then that particular item you're discussing at that point in time, this is going back a couple of years, but it's happened recently as well. There'd been over 15 billion of that particular item consumed, 15 billion little things, right? And if you look at Africa, where they have not great water supply, 90% of the people in Africa take that particular item on a daily basis. They had virtually zero adoption of that thing that goes in your shoulder, and they had by far the lowest rates of that flu-like thing than anywhere else in the world. And that to tie that up, here's where I was going with it. When we did that review and we discussed waterborne illnesses like Giardia, I uploaded the video, walked away. It was scheduled to air the following week. It was taken off of YouTube within 30 minutes for medical misinformation.
Well,
Which is
I've got one
misinformation,
point.
which is 100% true.
Yeah, I got one point, and Jeff may correct me, or even Mike, but what they're really counting on here for all of this, and we've all heard of herd immunity from 2020, when if you weren't on a ranch, you never heard of that term. There's also herd mentality, and that's what they're counting on right here, because herd mentality, what we've learned over centuries of time, is 85% of the population will see what's going on. They may be a little upset about it, but they just hope for the best, and they just want to keep shuffling along in what they're doing, and they hope it works out in the end. So then you have 10% of people that will get upset about it, right? But these 10% will look around and see no one else doing anything about it, so they will shuffle along. Really, you've only got 5% of the population that will ever get upset enough about it to do something about it. And then what we're seeing is what they do to that 5%. They either censor them or squash them. Because guess why? You get rid of that 5%, what's the other 95% going to do? They're going to shuffle
Whatever you
along.
want. Yeah.
And I mean, you're speaking to point 25, the smearing of those who challenge the state media propaganda.
Yes.
I mean, pretty much ties it up in a nutshell. Jeff?
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at the Great Barrington Declaration, where you had people like Jay Ratchacharian, who was the head of immunology at frickin' Stanford Medical School. He gets smeared and censored because he dares say, wait a minute, let's take a look at this and try and see if we're doing it right when it came to COVID.
Yep.
I mean, you got people who invented mRNA vaccine technology who said, wait a minute, this isn't really the right application for it. They all got censored. I mean, and these are brilliant people.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
So
we'll listen to Keith Oberman.
right, who cries urine out of his eyes. Did you catch that on X?
Oh gosh.
Go, no, seriously, go look it up. He was so mad at somebody a couple months ago. He said, "I'm never coming back on X." He was back on in a matter of hours. And he said he was so mad that he had urine coming out of his eyes, tears of urine. He's mentally unbalanced. He's a nutcase.
Yeah.
Quickly, two things. Glenn, you touched on Australia as far as censorship is concerned. Not sure if you guys are aware of this, but there was an individual who attacked a priest or a pastor in an Australian church, had a OTF knife out the front, and went to stab this guy, hit his cross, jammed it up. The blade wouldn't come out. So he ended up assaulting him, with the handle of the knife essentially. And the Australian Safety Commission told Elon Musk that he had to take it down, or else, they were going to pursue him legally amongst other ways. And now they're completely unhinged. You've got Australian senators saying that Elon Musk needs to be locked up, put in jail with the key thrown away because he refused to take the video down. But he did take the video down for Australia, and it's not on any servers in Australia. But these technocrats, Europe is bad for this as well, think that they can tell us as Americans and American companies what we can and cannot do. And they can get bent, literally. Like it's that bad. Before the conflicted question, Eric and Glenn, where can people find you online? We're going to put it down in the description, but let's hear it verbally too.
Privacyacademy.com.
That's super easy. You'd think I could remember something like that, right? Anybody have anything else they want to add as far as these 25 steps being used to trash America? Randy?
I do. So there's one golden saying that I've always remember. That's what I tell people I train. I tell people that I talk to. Look, the truth is, this is going to be a tough job, and there is no gain without sacrifice. It's a fact.
Sure.
You want to make $1 million, then you better be ready and willing to make 1 million sacrifices first. So we're going to have to sacrifice some stuff today for a better tomorrow. And that's where we've got to weigh this out and figure out what we're going to do.
True story. Like you've heard me say before, first thing in life you do is decide what you want. Next thing you do is decide what you're willing to give up to get it.
That's right.
Everything comes at a price. All right, let's wrap up on the conflicted question. A unique opportunity to kill a tyrant has presented itself. However, once the shot is fired and the man is dead, his entourage will surely kill you. Your family is far away in a semi-safe place, but they still need you. Would you sacrifice yourself for the greater good of the community and risk your family? Or would you keep your family safe and let the opportunity pass? How would you handle this situation and why? Got to go straight to the CIA on this one, Jeff.
Yeah.
The greater good.
Hey, there's a reason that when this stuff comes up, there's a reason I go to Jeff. One, he's super intelligent, and two,
Well, I
the rest
would,
of us then ride on his coattails and just say we would do what Jeff said.
Well, see, I tell everybody I'm the smartest man in the room because I'm the only man in the room. By default. No, I wouldn't, because I think the reason I am living and the reason I am, trying to survive in this world is for my family. And if I do something that basically puts my family at risk and causes, then everything I've done up to that point has been a waste. I'm trying to make sure my kids, my wife, my grandchildren can live a life. And if I put them in danger by doing something rash like that, I think it defeats the purpose. Now, I may try and come back and get the guy later when no one's looking. That's a different issue.
So I'm 100% actually with Jeff on this, with a little bit of a expansion on the final thing he said. I would try to get some intel on this guy while I could, and use that for create some sort of future opportunity. But no, family first at the end of the day. Doesn't do me any good, to be taken out as the provider and protector of my family. I'm going straight across my screen here. Glenn, you're next.
No, I totally agree.
See my theory on how we let Jeff answer the question, then we just say we do whatever Jeff would do. It works.
Yep.
It's a winning formula. Eric?
I'll agree.
Man, you guys are proving me right every time. Okay. Randy?
All right, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. So if this is a tyrant and he's evil, you know what I'm saying? This may be a God thing. And I'm going to pray to God first and whatever God leads me to do, regardless of my family, because God comes first even before my family. That's how we all should see it. That's how we're all supposed to be. It's written in the Bible that way. So if this was an evil tyrant, because you're going, these cards don't give you a lot of information. There was a lot more stuff would be involved in this before we actually pulled the trigger. But the reality is, if this was an evil tyrant that no one could do anything about, I'm probably going to kill the guy. Because I know, for one, my family's saved. I know both my kids are. I know my ex-wife is. I know my girlfriend is. And I know that we don't just say that, we live it out, right? So I know no matter what, if I follow what God says, he will take care of the rest.
And I can tell you that our good friend Jeff Nicholas would be very proud of you for that answer, Randy.
Oh yeah, Jeff, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Mr.
That's a
Blackhawk
fact.
down.
Yep, that's right.
Mike Sterling in the cleanup position.
Yeah.
You know, Randy, you're gonna like this one, but you know, it goes back to the old days of death to tyrants.
Yes.
And you know, we serve a greater good at a certain point. We all signed on that dotted line to serve a greater good. Now I will say, and Jeff, you might remember this, but bullets are for amateurs. I can get the guy. I guarantee you I can get the guy. Anybody can be got.
Bullets are loud.
I have other methods in order to go ahead and get rid of said dictator that will probably give me the win-win in this situation. Yeah.
That's not what the card says.
I know you're holding me to the card in this kind of a situation. You know,
changing the rules.
I know you're foisted my own petard.
If you look for Mike in the comment section, Mad Bomber Mike, he's the first one to say to people, "You can't do that because the card said so."
I am hoisted on my own petard. So
you're like doing steroids, man. This is like the athlete doing steroids. I know what the rules are, but yeah. I like the Second Amendment, but no, I'm not that guy. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, free the oppressed.
I will also say, you know, one of the things I learned in the infantry that applies to life, because I also learned it doesn't matter how high you go into special operations, no matter how high speed we get, no matter what our technology does, at the end of the day, when you're going to take that objective, it comes down to basic infantry tactics. That's a fact. So in infantry tactics, one of the most simplest and plainest ones is you always keep moving forward. To stop is to die. You must keep moving. You must keep moving forward, regardless of the challenges ahead.
Movement is life.
That's right.
Well said.
However, the first rule of being on the run: don't run.
That's right. Walk.
All right. Well, y'all are getting deep now, but listen, I appreciate everybody's time. Long episode of Survival Dispatch News, but interestingly enough, we see a lot of comments from people that listen to our podcast while they're working. Know some guys who are diesel mechanics who do that, other people who drive for a living. So I'm not afraid to make a longer one. We covered a lot of bases today. Can't thank everybody enough for their time.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.